Cassette Clinics. The Ideal Case Presentations by Dr. Ghanashyam Vaidya. You are listening to the case presentations in medicine, central nervous system. A case of paraplegia. A 45-year-old right-handed male Hindu patient Ramrao, teacher by occupation, staying at Gokak, comes with complaints of loss of power in both the legs since 4 days. The patient was apparently alright 10 days back when he developed moderate degree fever without chills, which lasted for about 4 days. Associated with the fever, he also had dry cough and colds, which has now subsided. 4 days back, the patient experienced cramp-like pains in the left lower limb. First, he felt difficulty in holding the chappals, then in getting up from the sitting position. Then he noticed weakness in the right leg also. And now he is unable to move both the lower limbs. The weakness has developed over a period of 2 days. What does this sequence of events tell you? Sir, this is an acute onset paraplegia which has followed an episode of fever, probably viral, and the paraplegia has developed over 2 days, starting with the distal muscles and progressing proximally. There is no history of tingling numbness in the legs, no history of loss of sensations in the legs, no history of retention of urine, no history of loss of bladder or bowel control. Well, how is it that bladder is not involved in paraplegia? Sir, the bladder may not be involved in Guillain-Barré syndrome, motor neuron diseases and demyelinating diseases. It is usually involved in acute transverse myelitis, traumatic paraplegia, cord compression due to tuberculosis of spine or tumor, and anterior spinal artery thrombosis. Proceed. There is no history of flexor spasms, no history of weakness in the upper limbs, no history of dysphagia, nasal regurgitation, dribbling of saliva, diplopia or disturbance of vision. Why did you ask that? To know whether cranial nerves are involved. When will cranial nerves be affected in association with paraplegia? In multiple sclerosis and in Guillain-Barré syndrome of ascending type. There is no history of difficulty in breathing, no history of loss of consciousness. Why? For possible intracranial cause. What are the intracranial causes of paraplegia? Thrombosis of an unpaired anterior cerebral artery, tumor of Fox cerebri, anterior sagittal vein thrombosis, and median pontine lesions. Regarding history of etiology, there is history of fever and respiratory tract infection 1 week prior to the onset of paraplegia. No history of any vaccination, no history of dog bite. What is the importance of history of vaccination? For post-vaccination myelitis and Guillain-Barré syndrome, which may occasionally follow the anti-rabies vaccine, especially the sheep brain vaccine. It may also rarely occur after mumps, measles and diphtheria vaccines. There is no history of trauma, fall from height or injury to the spine. There is no history of backache, no history suggestive of tuberculosis. That is, no history of chronic cough, expectoration, hemoptysis, fever or weight loss. How does tuberculosis cause paraplegia? Compression of the cord by a cold abscess or a bone piece following destruction and collapse of the bodies of the vertebrae in tuberculosis of spine. Secondly, intraspinal granuloma formation and vasculitis of the spinal artery. There is no history of swelling over the back, no history of root pains, no history of headache, vomiting or convulsions, no history of infective lesion over the face, no history of exposure to venereal diseases, no history of chronic alcoholism, no history of repeated attacks of acute abdominal pain, no history of weight loss, anorexia or other constitutional symptoms suggestive of malignancy, no history of urinary symptoms, hiccups or diminished urine output. Past history, there is no history of diabetes, no history of any neurological problem of paresis in the past. Family history, there is no history of limb weakness in any other family member. In which conditions can paraplegia be familial? In familial spastic paralysis, subacute combined degeneration and letharism. Personal history, the patient is non-smoker, non-alcoholic, vegetarian, previous sleep, bowel and bladder habits were normal. On general examination, the patient is middle-aged, moderately built, fairly nourished, conscious and cooperative. He is right-handed. Attitude, he is bedridden with both lower limbs lying externally rotated and extended at the hips, knees and ankles. What does this attitude suggest? This may be a paraplegia in extension or flaccid, that is lower motor neuron type of paraplegia. I will have to check the tone to differentiate. What is paraplegia in extension? In upper motor neuron lesions like transverse myelitis or injury, if the destruction is incomplete, affecting only the pyramidal tracts, then there is increased tone of the extensors with the hip extended and adducted, knee extended, and ankle plantar flexed. This is paraplegia in extension. There is clasp knife type of rigidity and deep reflexes are exaggerated. But if the destruction is complete, involving extrapyramidal tracts also, then the limbs become fixed in the attitude of flexion at the hip and knee with dorsiflexion of the ankles and toes, which is termed as paraplegia in flexion. It is an attitude of flexor withdrawal reflex. In slow growing lesions, there will first be paraplegia in extension followed by flexor spasms and then paraplegia in flexion. Paraplegia in extension, flexor spasms, paraplegia in flexion. What is a flexor spasm? It is a sudden involuntary contraction of all the flexors of the lower limbs in a paraplegic patient. It indicates progressive damage to the rubrospinal, that is extrapyramidal tracts. Once the damage is complete, the limbs will develop a constant flexion attitude, that is paraplegia in flexion. Yes, what is mass reflex? When paraplegia in flexion is developing, any stimulation below the level of the lesion results in a flexor withdrawal reflex plus reflex evacuation of bladder and rectum with sweating. This is termed as the mass reflex. Proceed. There is no soiling of the bed with urine. Vital signs are normal, that is pulse is 82 per minute, regular, good volume, normal character and equal on both the sides. Blood pressure is 130 by 80 millimeters of mercury in the right arm in supine position and respiration is 18 per minute regular. Coming to the examination of the central nervous system. On examination of the higher functions, the patient is conscious, well oriented in time, place and person. He is right-handed. Speech is normal. Memory, short-term and long-term memory is normal. No hallucinations or delusions. On examination of the cranial nerves, all cranial nerves are normal. That is, smell and vision are normal. External ocular movements are normal. Pupils are central, circular, equal on both the sides, reacting to light, accommodation and ciliospinal reflex. There is no ptosis or nystagmus. Corneal and conjunctival reflexes are normal. Jaw bite and jaw jerk is normal. There is no deviation of the angle of the mouth. Eye closure and wrinkling of the forehead is normal. Movements of the tongue and uvula are normal. Gag reflex is normal. And there is no weakness of the trapezius and sternomastoid. On examination of the motor system, there is no muscle wasting in the upper and lower limbs. The tone of all the muscles in the lower limb is reduced, that is in the flexors and extensors of the knee and ankle, and flexors, extensors, adductors and abductors of the hip. What does the hypotonia suggest? That it is either a lower motor neuron type of paralysis, or since the history is very short, that is just 4 days, it may be upper motor neuron type of paralysis in the state of neuronal shock. How do you test the tone of the muscles? By moving the joints passively and noting the resistance offered by the muscles to passive movements. Secondly, by palpating the muscle mass. If the tone is reduced, the muscles will feel flabby, and if it is increased, the muscles will feel firm. In which conditions do you get increased tone of the muscles? In all upper motor neuron type of lesions, that is pyramidal and extrapyramidal disorders, decerebrate rigidity, then tetanus and tetany, strychnine poisoning and hysterical conditions. Proceed. The power of all the muscles in the lower limbs is grade 0. Coordination cannot be tested. Beaver's sign is positive. What is Beaver's sign? On raising the head and neck, if the umbilicus is pulled up, it indicates paralysis of the lower recti. That is, a positive Beaver's sign will indicate the level of the lesion to be around T10. Go ahead. Reflexes. The deep reflexes, that is the knee and the ankle jerk, are absent on both the sides. Deep reflexes are normal in the upper limbs. Testing the superficial reflexes, the plantars are absent on both the sides. In which conditions do you get an absent plantar reflex? Firstly, if the sensations of the sole are lost, and secondly, if there is a lower motor neuron lesion at S1, then paralysis of the extensor hallucis longus or hallux rigidus may also give a false impression of an absent plantar reflex. But here, the contraction of the tensor fascia lata will be present and felt. What is Babinski's sign? Babinski's sign is an extensor plantar response with extension of the great toe, extension and fanning of the other toes, and dorsiflexion of the ankle. It is also associated with contraction of the tensor fascia lata. Yes, how do you elicit it? By stroking the lateral border of the sole from the heel to the ball of the foot and then across to the ball of the great toe. It can also be elicited by squeezing the tendoachilles or the calf muscles, or by stroking the anteromedial surface of the upper third of tibia. What is the significance of a positive Babinski's sign? It indicates a pyramidal tract lesion, but it may also be seen in absence of pyramidal lesions in infants under 2 years of age, during deep sleep or sedation, during coma due to metabolic causes like hypoglycemia, and transiently after convulsions due to epilepsy or ECT therapy. What is the cause of this abnormal response? In the normal reflex arc of the plantar reflex, on stimulating the lateral border of the foot, both the flexors and extensors of the toes are stimulated. But the flexor contraction is more powerful and the toes go into flexion. But when the higher influence over the arc is removed in the pyramidal tract lesions or in coma, then the extensor contraction becomes more powerful and overpowers the flexors, giving a positive Babinski's sign. Proceed. Coming to the other superficial reflexes, abdominals are present in the upper half and absent in the lower half on both the sides. The bulbocavernosus, that is cremasteric, and anal reflexes are absent. What are the root values of these reflexes? For superficial reflexes, abdominal reflex is T6 to T10 above the umbilicus and T10 to T12 below the umbilicus. In the lumbosacral part, plantar reflex is S1, bulbocavernosus reflex is S234, and anal reflex is S45. For deep reflexes, the biceps and supinator reflexes are C56, while triceps is C78. The knee jerk is lumbar, L234, and ankle jerk is sacral, S12. Yes, how did you test the knee jerk? I placed my left hand under the knee, raising the knee and flexing it by 20 degrees. Then I asked the patient to keep the leg completely relaxed and then struck the patellar tendon with the percussion hammer, giving a sharp blow. There was no contraction of the quadriceps. So I asked the patient to hook the fingers of both his hands together, pulling them out strongly, and then repeated the hammer blow. Even with this reinforcement, there was no contraction of the quadriceps. So I interpreted the jerk as absent. Why did you ask the patient to pull his fingers? To reinforce the reflex. A strong voluntary act will increase the muscle tone throughout the body and also divert the patient's mind from the site of examination. This can also be achieved by asking the patient to clench his teeth or raise his head. Yes, how do you grade the reflexes? Normal reflex is graded as 2+, a brisk reflex is 3+, and a clonus is 4+. On the other side, a depressed reflex is 1+, and absent reflex is grade 0. If it can be elicited only with reinforcement, it is charted as +-. What does the clinical picture suggest now? There is a reduced tone of the lower limb muscles with power 0 and absent deep and superficial reflexes. So it is probably a lower motor neuron type of lesion, the level being around T10. Or it could be an early upper motor neuron lesion in a state of neuronal shock. And what would the picture be in a fully developed upper motor neuron type of lesion at the same level? There will be hypertonia of the lower limb muscles with clasp knife type of rigidity. The deep reflexes, that is the knee and the ankle jerks, will be exaggerated with clonus, and the plantars will be extensors. Proceed. On examination of the sensory system, the cutaneous sensations of touch, pain and temperature are normal on both lower limbs. The perineal sensations are normal, that is no saddle anesthesia. Deep sensations of vibration and joint position are normal. Tactile localization, tactile discrimination and stereognosis is normal. What is tactile localization? It is the power of localization of the area of skin touched based purely on touch sensation, that is, with the eyes closed. How did you test it? I asked the patient to keep the eyes closed, then touched different areas of the body with my pen and asked him to put his finger on the same point. The patient can show the point with 1 to 2 inch accuracy, so the tactile localization is normal. And how did you test the touch sensation? I tested the touch sensation with a wisp of cotton wool. I asked the patient to close the eyes and say yes whenever he felt the touch of cotton wool. Then I tested on symmetrical areas on both sides of the face, neck, chest, abdomen and legs, avoiding hairy areas. Why? Because hairy surfaces can conduct touch sensations through special receptors in the hair roots. Proceed. The touch sensation was normal and equal on both the sides. Then I tested for pain sensation in a similar fashion using a pinprick. How did you do that? Using a sharp ordinary pin, I held it with its tip pointing just beyond my fingers and struck it firmly to elicit a painful sensation. I asked the patient to close the eyes and say yes whenever he felt the pain of the pinprick. Then I tested the temperature sensation using two metal tubes, one filled with warm water and one with cold water. Then asking the patient to close the eyes, I tested symmetrical areas of skin, asking the patient what feeling he gets when the tube is touched. The inability to differentiate between hot and cold is termed as loss of temperature sensation, and it is seen in conditions like syringomyelia, hematomyelia, or tumors which affect the central portion of the spinal cord. What is dissociated anesthesia? Loss of only pain and temperature sensation with preservation of touch and other sensations is termed as dissociated anesthesia. The sensory fibers for pain and temperature run anatomically close together, so these sensations are lost together in lesions affecting the central part of the spinal cord like syringomyelia, tabes dorsalis, hematomyelia, intramedullary tumors, or anterior spinal artery thrombosis, and lesions affecting lateral medulla as in syringobulbia or posterior inferior cerebellar artery thrombosis. How did you test the deep or proprioceptive sensations? The proprioceptive sensations are joint sense, position sense, vibration sense and deep pressure sense. I tested the joint sense on the big toe of each leg. I fixed the proximal phalanx with my left hand and held the sides of the distal phalanx with my right hand. Then I asked the patient to close the eyes and tell whether the toe was up or down as I moved it up or down slowly, randomly and passively. The joint sense is normal, indicating that posterior column and roots are normal. Then I tested the sense of position. I asked the patient to keep his eyes closed and his hand flaccid. Then I passively lifted and flexed it and asked him to describe the position and then imitate the movement again. Alright, proceed. There are no signs of meningeal irritation, that is, no neck stiffness, Kernigh's and Brudzinski's signs are absent, and straight leg raising test is negative. On specific systemic examination, the respiratory system is normal, no rales or abnormal breath sounds. For abdomen, liver, spleen are not palpable, no lump or fluid. Spine shows no gibbous, no tenderness, no tuft of hair or spina bifida, no kyphoscoliosis, no cold abscess over the chest, back or abdomen. Cardiovascular system is normal. Skin shows no neurocutaneous markers, that is, no neurofibromas or Café-Oleth spots. There is no thickening of the nerves. Which neurocutaneous markers do you know of? Café-Oleth spots, multiple neurofibromatosis, portwine stains on the face, that is Sturge-Weber syndrome, telangiectasis, and tuberosclerosis. And what do thickened nerves suggest? Leprosy, diabetes, amyloidosis, and SMT syndrome. Proceed. My diagnosis is acute paraplegia of lower motor neuron type at about T10 level without sensory and bladder involvement due to Guillain-Barré syndrome. My diagnosis is acute paraplegia of lower motor neuron type at about T10 level without sensory and bladder involvement due to Guillain-Barré syndrome. Why do you say that it is due to Guillain-Barré syndrome? There is history suggestive of viral fever 1 week prior to the onset of paraplegia. The onset of weakness is ascending type, distal to proximal. On examination, it is a lower motor neuron type of paraplegia with no sensory involvement, no bladder and bowel involvement, no cranial nerve involvement. This is a clinical picture of Guillain-Barré syndrome. Why not tuberculosis of spine? First of all, the onset is acute, in contrast to tuberculosis of spine where the onset is gradual. There is no past history suggestive of pulmonary tuberculosis. On examination, the spine shows no gibbous, tenderness or cold abscess, and the paraplegia is lower motor neuron type. In tuberculosis of spine, there will always be upper motor neuron type of paraplegia. Can it be transverse myelitis? No, sir. Firstly, this is a lower motor neuron type of paralysis, and secondly, there is no sensory involvement, no bladder and bowel involvement. So this cannot be acute transverse myelitis. Can it be hysterical? Sir, in this patient, there is no sensory loss and the deep and superficial reflexes are absent. So it cannot be hysterical paraplegia. In hysterical paraplegia, the reflexes may be normal or exaggerated but never absent. What are the other features of hysterical paraplegia? The plantars are never extensors. Bladder and bowel are usually not involved. And if the sensory loss is present, it does not correlate the anatomical distribution of nerves. What type of neurogenic bladder will you see after a spinal cord injury? A reflex or automatic bladder if the injury is above the sacral segments, that is, a upper motor neuron lesion. And an autonomous bladder if the injury is in the sacral portion of the spinal cord, that is a lower motor neuron lesion. A reflex or automatic bladder if the injury is above the sacral segments, and an autonomous bladder if the injury is in the sacral portion of the spinal cord. What is a reflex bladder? There is no bladder sensation nor any voluntary control, but the local reflex arc of the bladder is present. So, if bladder is stimulated by pressure over the hypogastrium or by pinching over the area, the reflex will be activated and the bladder will be evacuated completely but without any voluntary control. This is reflex or automatic bladder. Then what is autonomous bladder? In autonomous bladder or lower motor neuron type of bladder, there is neither voluntary control nor reflex control as the local reflex arc is destroyed. So the patient has no bladder sensation, cannot evacuate the bladder voluntarily, but he can press over the hypogastrium and empty the bladder partly by pressure. The bladder will never empty completely and will become large with lot of residual urine. There may also be stress incontinence on coughing and straining. This is autonomous bladder due to injury to the sacral segments, conus medullaris or cauda equina. How is the bladder normally innervated and controlled? The parasympathetic supply S2, 3 and 4 causes emptying of the bladder by contracting the detrusor and relaxing the internal sphincter. The sympathetic supply L2, 3, 4 will prevent bladder evacuation till circumstances are favorable by relaxing the detrusor and contracting the internal sphincter. The pudendal nerve S2, 3 controls the external sphincter for voluntary control of micturition. And the afferent fibers of pain and stretch sensation, that is sensation of fullness of the bladder, go with the parasympathetic nerves, that is S2, 3 and 4. Now tell me, what is uninhibited bladder? Uninhibited bladder is a bladder without cortical inhibition, that is without the voluntary control to start or stop micturition, just like the bladder of an infant. Imagine an infant. As soon as the bladder becomes full, there is an urge to pass the urine and the bladder gets evacuated. The patient cannot hold it till he goes to the toilet. Also, when the patient goes to the toilet, he cannot initiate micturition voluntarily and takes a long time to stimulate the reflex. This is the uninhibited bladder. When will you suspect a spinal tumor? Whenever there is a gradually progressing compressive myelopathy without any vertebral column lesion, I will suspect a spinal tumor. Compressive myelopathy means a progressive spastic paraplegia with sensory loss, root pains, and sometimes sphincter involvement. How will you differentiate between extramedullary and intramedullary tumors? Extramedullary tumors present with root pains, muscle spasms, marked spasticity, and no muscle atrophy. The sensory involvement is rare and sphincter involvement is also late. In contrast, intramedullary tumors rarely ever have root pains. There are no muscle spasms. Muscle spasticity is minimal, but there is a marked muscle atrophy, and sensory involvement is always there with dissociate anesthesia, trophic changes, and sphincter disturbances. If Brown-Séquard syndrome is seen, it is only with extramedullary tumors. What is Brown-Séquard syndrome? It is a syndrome of hemisection of the spinal cord comprising of spastic paralysis of one leg, that is on the affected side, with loss of pain and temperature on the opposite side. Touch sensation is not affected, and deep sensations of position and vibration sense are lost on the affected side. When will you suspect a lesion of conus medullaris? When there is saddle anesthesia and partial weakness of the legs, that is paraparesis. How will you differentiate between a lesion of conus medullaris and a cauda equina lesion? If there are root pains with marked asymmetric muscle wasting and weakness, then it is a lesion of cauda equina. And if there is mainly sensory loss with saddle-shaped anesthesia in the perineum and early involvement of bladder and bowel sphincters, it is a lesion of conus medullaris. Coming to reflexes, in conus medullaris lesion, only the ankle jerk is lost. Knee jerk and plantar reflex are normal. While in cauda equina lesion, all reflexes are affected. Knee jerk is lost, ankle jerk is lost, and plantars are either extensors or absent. Good. Thank you, sir. This is the end of the discussion on paraplegia in the series of case presentations in medicine in the cassette clinics by Dr. Ghanashyam Vaidya.